Today, on Pat's Car Garage, after being thoroughly impressed with my R12a conversion on the Mercedes, I decided to try the same thing with the Jeep. So, let me show you where the low side and high side connections are, and then we can get right to it. The high side, conveniently, is right here on the compressor. There's a little H written on it, so hard to miss that. And the low side is right here. So, thankfully, quite a bit easier to reach the low side than on the Mercedes, and actually the high side too for that matter, so that's fun.
What isn't fun is shorting out the high side hose on the battery terminal. Be careful which way the hose is pointing. Now I set up the vacuum pump and I start vacuuming for 20 minutes. After that, I shut the pump off for a few minutes, make sure the vacuum holds, and then I resume vacuuming for another 40 minutes so I get a total vacuuming time of 1 hour. So before starting this, I actually had the remaining R134a in the system recovered by a local air conditioning shop. It was a little bit low, but it didn't have any problem holding that charge. So I'm not worried about any leaks really. Now, since the system was never opened, I don't need to replace the accumulator.
So it did just start pouring. We're having these random, terrible showers coming through in between sunny breaks. So I just covered the vacuum pump with some cardboard, and I'll let it keep running for another, 30 minutes or however long I have left. Close the hood a little bit too, so it doesn't rain in the engine compartment. But yeah, ghetto solution, but it'll have to do. So the rain's still coming down. My vacuum pump has got another 20 minutes to go, so I'm not worried. It seems like the weather is gonna let up over there. You can just about see that the sky's clearing up, which is lovely. But it's cooled down enough that what I'm gonna do is, it's obviously nicer to do your AC when it's warm, and it was when I started this, but now I'm kind of worried about not getting as much refrigerant out of these cans. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up a bottle of, not a bottle, just a big bowl of water, of hot water, and I'm going to sit the cans in that I'm going to use. That should warm up the refrigerant inside, hopefully raising the pressure and getting more of the refrigerant out when I put it into the system. Yeah, unfortunately, my camera died somewhere during that. All I did was open up the first can of refrigerant upside down, and now it's just time for me to start the engine, crank the AC up, and fill the rest of the system up.
Before opening the low side valve on the manifold, you should also purge the yellow hose by unscrewing it a tiny little bit at the manifold and opening up your refrigerant can for just a couple of seconds to get all the air out of the yellow line. At this point, pick the can up upside down and shake it around to get all the refrigerant out. I'm pretty sure the can was already empty before I started the engine, but it's good to make sure everything gets out. It is normal for the AC compressor to cycle on and off at this point. There isn't enough refrigerant to maintain a high enough low side pressure, so the compressor shuts itself off whenever the pressure is too low. It will kick back on when the pressure rises high enough. I also timed shutting the low side valve on the manifold off when the pressure was at its lowest to get as much refrigerant out of the can as I could. Remember that during charging, you must never open the high side manifold valve. You charge only through the low side. Of course, whenever changing the can, make sure you also close the low side. To avoid having to purge the yellow line again, I closed the can tap and left it closed until I was just about ready to screw on the new can. This avoids having any air enter the yellow hose while switching the can. You want to avoid dumping the entire can all at once, though the risk of getting any liquid into the compressor on this particular system is probably zero. It doesn't cost anything to be careful. My low side pressure was dropping to 27-ish psi before shutting the compressor down. As you open the can, the pressure will increase quickly as the new refrigerant is boiling off, so just observe the low side pressure as you open the can more and more and make sure it doesn't climb too quickly. The can must be upside down during this entire process. Eventually you will have the tap fully open and you can just shake the can around until you can feel it's empty. Charging as a liquid happens pretty quickly, so this will only take a couple of minutes.
And just like that, we are done. So let's check everything out, make sure it's all good. It is pretty cold today right now because it cooled down after the rain. It's only about 17 degrees outside, so my pressures are going to be a little bit on the low side, but I do have some good news. The compressor is running non-stop, which is what we want. It's not cycling. Pressures, let's take a look at those. So yeah, like I said, it is only about 17 degrees right now, which is pretty chilly, but I can tell you that these vents, they are so cold. That is ridiculous. Honestly, like, it definitely works better on a simpler system than on the Mercedes. The Mercedes is still plenty cold, but Jesus Christ is this cold. What the hell? Like freezing my hand off. Okay, so here's what I did to make sure as much refrigerant as possible gets back into the system before disconnecting. So with the engine running, you saw me turn off, close this here. So this is going to be at its lowest pressure when the engine is running, but you leave the high side open. Then you switch the engine off, you wait for the gauges to stabilize, and then you close this one, which means any refrigerant in this, or as much refrigerant in the high side hose as possible, has made its way back into the compressor. Then you close it. Once everything is closed, you're ready to disconnect your hoses. It's interesting, the Mercedes is pretty cold at idle, but this is just stupid cold at idle. It's ridiculous. I might have to adjust the amount of refrigerant in the Mercedes, but once again, I am super happy with this stuff. Like, it's night and day between R134a. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I still do plan on making the comparison video between this and R134a, so you can stick around for that. Otherwise, well, farewell, and I hope you've learned something new in this video too.